Much to the dismay of the ones propagating vaccine hesitancy on social media, and much to the dismay of critics of the indigenous vaccine, which is Covaxin, the phase 3 clinical trial data of Covaxin is out. It was released yesterday by the Subject Expert Committee under the Drug Controller General of India, or the DGCI, and the efficacy rate was found to be 77.3%. And this was when more than 25,000 people participated in the trials. To give you some perspective, in the Pfizer phase 3 trials, there were around 43,000 people. So 25,000, decent number. Covaxin has an efficacy rate of 77%, rather more. Now, the Covaxin was developed jointly by the ICMR and the National Institute of Virology, which is located in Pune. But Indians, after Covaxin, we just saw a few days ago a South Bombay comedian, a prominent actor, tweeting that we need to have more data on Covaxin. We risked our bodies with Covaxin. The government owes us data. There's a lot of vaccine hesitancy that has been propagated time and again. And India has some unusual problems which stem from its urban population, that of questioning the vaccine even after the efficacy data has been released. Now, it's not the fault of the general public also always to be confused by all this jargon, because you don't expect people to understand everything about a pandemic that is being encountered once in a century. It's a once in a century pandemic, so people won't understand what efficacy is, how it works, what mRNA vaccines are. And we've done some amazing articles on Swarajya, so do go check them out, which are explainers on all the aspects of COVID-19. Nevertheless, coming back here. So the next confusion that might happen is that of efficacy. I can already imagine a prominent best-selling author tweeting that, hey, look, Pfizer and Moderna have efficacy of more than 90%. Covaxin has an efficacy of 77%. So how is it that we are not allowing the imports, or we were not earlier allowing the imports of Pfizer and Moderna, but now we are actually injecting people with Covaxin? These kind of questions will come up. Some will go a step ahead and in their wisdom will confuse efficacy for efficiency and might as well say that, look, 77% of Covaxin is only effective, whereas Moderna and Pfizer are 94-95% effective. It may sound funny right now, it may sound laughable right now, but these are the kind of problems we've encountered at COVID-19. These are the kind of WhatsApp forwards we've received during COVID-19. Look around, ask your parents, ask your friends. Hasn't anyone received forwards which have said that if you take the vaccine, this will happen, that will happen. The government is hiding some stuff. There's been so much misinformation. So when something as important, yet as small as efficacy comes out, it becomes a responsibility to tell people about it. Now let's start about efficacy. Let's start about discussing efficacy with a story. Now this story takes us back to March 2021. And it takes us to US in the city of Detroit in Michigan. The mayor there is given around 6,000 doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but the mayor rejects them. He says that I want to give my people the best vaccines, not any other vaccine. Now, what was his reason behind it? He says that Moderna and Pfizer, they have an efficacy rate of 94% and 95% respectively. Moderna has 94%, Pfizer has 95%. So he says, why should I go for Johnson & Johnson, which has just an efficacy rate of 66%? He actually goes on social media. He says, we'll give our people the best. Johnson & Johnson won't happen. And he rejects it in the first place. And this is where he gets efficacy wrong. Now, efficacy, how it happens, and stay with me here. Efficacy is calculated in the phase 3 trials of any vaccine. For Pfizer, it was done with 43,000 participants. But how is it done? Let's assume there is a group of 43,000, let's assume there's a group of 100 people, okay? Now, these 100 people in phase 3 trials, just for the sake of argument, the number is always far more greater. For Covaxin, it was more than 25,000. For Pfizer, it was more than 43,000. But let's assume in our explanation that 100 people have been chosen as subjects for phase 3 trials for a vaccine. Let's assume 100 people, right? 50 people in group A, 50 people in group B. Fair enough. Until now, we are sorted. 50 people in group A, 50 people in group B. Now, group A people are given what is called a placebo. Now, what is a placebo? It's something like an injection which is administered, but to cause a psychological effect, not a physiological impact. So basically, you will feel that you've been given an injection, but you wouldn't know if it's going to have some change in your body or not. So it's called a placebo. The other half is given the actual vaccine which is under trial. Now, none of them know what they have been given, but they certainly assume that they have been given either of the placebo or the vaccine, and that's for the administering agencies to know what they have given whom. Now, these 100 people are then sent out to live their normal lives in the world. They do what they do generally. They follow their routines, no hampering in the daily life. 100 people, 50 with the placebo, 50 with the vaccine. After a few months, they cross-check the data. Now, let's assume of these 100 people who were outside, 10 of them contracted the virus. Now, there are 3 case scenarios. 10 people contracted the virus out of 100. Now, if the ones with placebo and the ones with vaccine are in equal number, that is 5 people with placebo and 5 people with the vaccine have contracted the virus, your efficacy is 0%, because equal number of people are getting impacted irrespective of the placebo or the vaccine. So, virus is impacting both of them equally. So, clearly your virus is not working, your vaccine is not working, efficacy is 0. The other scenario is where all the 10 cases of the coronavirus are from your placebo group, whereas none of the people who were injected with the vaccine have got the virus. That is where your efficacy is 100%. Now, the third scenario can be 9 people in the placebo group getting the virus, 1 person in the vaccine group getting the virus. In that case, your efficacy becomes 90%. Now, what is efficacy? Does it mean that out of 10 people who get the vaccine in phase 3 trial, only 1 will get the coronavirus? No. This is where the distinction must be made. Efficacy is not about a group. It's about an individual. So when I say that there is 90% efficacy for a vaccine, that means you're 90% as less likely to contract the virus as against normal circumstances when you are not taken the vaccine. Please bear with me here. When Moderna and Pfizer say they have an efficacy rate of 94-95%, or Covaxin says it has an efficacy of 77-78%, it means you are 77 or 94 or 95% less likely to contract the virus with the vaccine as without the vaccine. And this is at an individual level. And that is what must we understand about efficacy. Now, the experts in the United States said, so what does it make the vaccines look like? And this is where we come to the second aspect of the problem, that how the clinical trials are conducted. Now, this was this one interesting debate that came up with Johnson & Johnson when the mayor rejected those vaccines. If we go back to our story in Detroit, they said that Pfizer and Moderna, when they tested their vaccines, when the phase 3 trials were on, the number of cases in the United States were far less as to when Johnson & Johnson did its phase 3 trials. So when Johnson & Johnson were doing the phase 3 trials, the cases were far more than when Moderna and Pfizer did it, which means that the cases registered during the Johnson & Johnson phase 3 trials would significantly be more, and that would have an impact on the efficacy rate. But then the experts also argue that the vaccines are not supposed to cut down, to eliminate the virus. It's not like you take a vaccine and the virus won't hit you. Now imagine a scale. At the extreme, this end is death, unfortunate death. At this end is no impact from the coronavirus, asymptomatic. In between, you have light symptoms, moderate symptoms, extreme symptoms, hospitalization, ICU, ventilator, and eventual death. What the vaccine does, it makes sure you remain to the moderate to low symptom area. That is where you want to remain. It cuts down the transmission. It cuts down the chances of hospitalization and death. And if you take Covaxin today, or Moderna today, or Pfizer today, or any COVID shield today, any vaccine, the idea is to use the efficacy rate to understand that if you take a Covaxin, you're 77-78% less likely to contract the virus as without it. The same is the case with COVID shield. The same is the case with Pfizer. Same is the case with Moderna. However, these vaccines, especially the question of Pfizer, we'll put a link in the description where we explain why Pfizer earlier was not given approval to, be administered in India. So there will be different aspects to that also. But coming back to the efficacy rate, that's how it works. It's supposed to cut down the transmission of the virus. 1, it's supposed to ensure light and moderate symptoms to the people. And lastly, it's supposed to ensure less and less hospitalizations and less number of deaths. So when someone asks you that Covaxin has an efficacy of 77%, is it as effective as COVID shield with an efficacy of 90+% or Moderna or Pfizer? Yes, it is. It is as much effective as other vaccines. It doesn't matter which vaccine you're taking, as long as you're taking the vaccine. And now that we've just registered 8.5 million doses administered in one day and then 5.2 million doses yesterday, go ensure that you get the jab and you encourage those who have not gone for the jab yet. It works. It will always work. Thank you.